Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Liam's Hockey. Yeah, it's been a little while, hasn't it? First of all, of course, every show brought to you by Hosie and Brown Automotive. I want to thank Rod Brown for constant support here of the show. I don't have a new garage to roll out on this show, but I will for the next one. You know me, I like to get all my, all my information, get everything sorted, make sure to give the boys a good plug. But we'll have a garage for them next time. But for now, as it always is, Liam's Hockey brought to you by Hosie and Brown Automotive. When I do my shot of whiskey a little later, that will be courtesy of Ad Seal Services and my dear friend Mark Cullen. So we'll have that for you in a few minutes' time. As I said, first show in a little while. Didn't really feel it was right last week to roll one out, at least on my social media platforms, when we're promoting the GoFundMe page for my friend Mike Glover, who had quite a tumultuous week with the amputation of his right leg above the knee to hopefully stem off a very aggressive and rare form of cancer. And so far so good. For those of you who have contributed, by the way, to that site, to the cause, the GoFundMe, thank you so much. And Mike is a longtime friend and tough road ahead, but I'll tell you what, his response to date, his comments, the interviews, the stories in the Ottawa Sun. There's another one today. I want to thank Bruce Garriock as well for the stories that he's done, and Mike's intention is to get back on the golf course and certainly back scouting, what he hopes, and back to work. The hospital, ironically, where he worked, and living life normally again. It's certainly not any other type of condemnation at all, other than once hopefully he's deemed cancer-free and gets a prosthetic and get the rehab on that, he can get back to as normal a life as possible. But thank you to all of you, any of you who supported him and continue to do so, and his brother Rick is going to keep that page open, and the likelihood is that the goal that they set, which they have surpassed at 100,000, will probably need more for whatever variety of reasons that may arise. So thank you for all of that. And then, of course, shortly after the news of Mike's trauma that he was dealing with, local resident here, Greg Holmes in Osgood, passed away. And Greg, a guy like many of you, again, I knew a long time, part of the legendary Holmes family here in Osgood. And I wrote, a little memorial has become my custom. And for those of you that read it and commented on it, I thank you very much, especially any family members, any Holmes family, extended or otherwise. Certainly some great comment on it, and I'm very thankful. If it brought any of you any solace, I'm very, very happy about that. And believe me, it's when I do those things, they're therapeutic for me as well, And I mean that sincerely, because it's a huge loss for all of us who knew him and for our community. I've lived 21 years here in Osgood, but I was around these parts over 50 years ago as a young boy starting to play hockey, and you didn't have to be around here very long before you ran into a Holmes somewhere. So that's the second child to pass away of Joyce and Stuart, who the arena is named after, Stuart Holmes. And it's just not supposed to be that way. So condolences to all of them. Again, just reasons why I just didn't feel right throwing up a video. So here I am today as life does move on, and we all have to move on. And so I wanted to fire one up here. It was time to offer up a couple of comments on some hockey stuff. And I just want to go back for a second, and because with all the trauma with Mike Glover losing a leg, and there's probably some of you, I know myself anyway, I know some people who have dealt with this and have come through it, actually come through it like a shining star. And I think all the way back to the 70s at Readview, one of our most popular members, I tell you, a real character, guy named Wayne Martell. In fact, his ex-wife is still a member at the club, Marion, great lady. And Wayne was just a legend out there in the 70s and into the early 80s. And in fact, he lost. He had his partial amputation after a horrific car accident. If I'm not mistaken, there was loss of life, one if not possibly two, in that accident. And he went on. I'll tell you, he was a single-digit handicap at Rideau on a prosthetic, and some of the stories, man, I'll tell you, our men's night back in the day, I was an employee there at the time, and so I was a young man in my mid to late teens hanging around these guys. And some of the card games on Wednesday nights, if I'm not mistaken, I think Mike's prosthetic ended up as collateral in a couple of those pots, but that's another story for another time. But suffice to say, he went on to lead a very healthy and normal life, still alive, still with us. And there's no reason why Glovey can't do the same, that's for sure. So, again, thanks to everybody who has supported Mike through the GoFundMe, comments and otherwise of support. And again, the condolences that have rained in through me for the Holmes family on the passing of Greg. So, without further ado, little Liam's hockey for you here. Got to back this puppy up, back this train up here to the Connor McDavid $5,000 fine. I had no problem with it. I'm going to blow through these here. I had no problem with the penalty on the ice when McDavid caught Kotkaniemi with the elbow. First of all, he caught him in the shoulder, bounced up to the head. Right call on the ice. And then, actually, I didn't need to get anything after in terms of supplemental discipline fine or otherwise. And they maxed out and gave him the $5,000 fine. You gotta love the comments. No matter when there's a fine, so many people always chime in, no, $5,000, drop in the bucket. Yeah, it's a drop in the bucket. But, you know, the NHL is a professional business. It's owned. It has an ownership. It's the 31, soon-to-be 32 ownership groups own the NHL. Okay? They're over here. They bargain collectively with the players who form the foundation of the league that they own. So the ownership group hired a man named Gary Bettman to run their league. And he in turn has a staff, led largely by Bill Daly. So Gary Bettman, Bill Daly, and staff. They run the NHL for the ownership groups. The players hired a man named Donald Fear to represent them. And those two groups get together every few years, sadly, in the last 25, with acrimony enough to stop hockey, as we all well know. That said, they collectively bargain what happens on the ice and what happens off the ice. Yes, that's right, folks. They actually control the Department of Player Safety. The Department of Player Safety do not work or run that operation with autonomy. They have structure that they have to follow in terms of what they can hand out for suspensions, what they can hand out for fines. And yes, is it a joke that a man making 10, 11, 12, 13 million a year is fined $5,000? Of course it is. You know that. I know that. They don't care. They're the big business. If you're that pissed off about it, don't consume the product. Don't buy the merchandise. Don't watch the games. Go do something else. Because that's the way it works. And I had no problem with it. None. And they'd be like, Liam, you're such a hypocrite. What about Chandler Stevenson? Getting 3 games for his elbow on Tobias Bjornfot of LA. Stevenson with Vegas. Totally different hits. If you cannot decipher that, so many people just don't get the sport. They think every headshot should be a suspension. They don't get these are largely alpha males. They don't understand even why the aggression is part of the game. They don't understand why there's fighting. They don't understand why there's cheap shots. They want books thrown at anybody who does anything egregious. So many of you just don't get it. You don't get it. You never played anything competitive. You don't understand what these men are going through, and you don't understand the ramifications, how the league is governed by the collective bodies to form this agreement, the CBA, the owners and the players. They could care less what the media think. They could care less. They could care less what Joe Fan thinks. They're going to say all the right things when they have to make a statement, but they don't care. So if you're that pissed off about it, go watch horse jumping or something. Find another sport. Don't consume the product. Anyway, you're not going to do that. You want to have your little say on Twitter, right? You're all upset. Oh, look at me. Look at me writing my 250 characters and just say that is so wrong. And McDavid's a superstar and that's why he didn't get suspended. No, you're a moron. And you don't understand. That's why he didn't get suspended. He got a couple games 3 years ago for his hit on Nick Leddy. So the way it works, of course, you're only repeat offender status in the last 18 months, but that only affects the money. They could have tied that in. You're still on the docket for any type of egregious foul that's suspensionable from before. They dealt with that 3 years ago and he got a couple games, and they dealt with it this year on Kotkaniemi. Simple as that. Stevenson came in like a freight train, like a rhino, and drilled Bjornfot right in the head with his elbow. Cut him, dropped him, knocked him out of the game, was assessed a 5 in a game, right call, and the supplemental discipline was 3 games, right call. 2 totally different hits, yet elbowing infractions. But so many just they can't grasp it. You just can't get it. You see bias. You think there's a conspiracy. Got to protect, what can you do? What can you do? You can lead the horse to water, but unfortunately, given many of you enough brains to comprehend how it works, why it works, how it's officiated, how it's called, how it's governed, many of you will just never get it. But that's what makes cesspool, the Twitter and social media, the cesspool that it is. And you gotta understand that when you're going in. Which I do, so I do get a lot of chuckle out of it. But anyway, I had to comment on it. Very hot button topic there 2 weeks ago. And behind in shows, so I wanted to catch up on those. Same with Nathan MacKinnon, no problem at all. In fact, that was the funniest thing, the bowling ball toss of his helmet to Connor Garland. They have a history going back to Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. By the way, I love Garland's game. Holy cow. He is really an up-and-comer for Arizona, who have surprisingly here really, really entered the playoff discussion, haven't they? I don't know how many people catch their games. Probably a lot of names you don't know. But you look at Jacob Chikrin and what he did, what he's done recently here. Young man with ties through his father here to the Ottawa area. Jeff, who played in the NHL in the 80s and early 90s. Tough hombre, great guy, great family. And for Jacob to get that hat trick, that was just amazing stuff. And I've met the young man and I think the world of him. And I'll tell you what, good for Arizona. You know, they got rid of the calculator there as a GM. And look at all the BS they've gone through, getting caught with their hand in the cookie jar in terms of the combine, everything else that's happened there, how they've run that team. How do you not love Rick Tocchet? I mean, if you didn't like Rick Tocchet when he played, then you clearly don't understand the sport of hockey. And I've always been a fan of the guy, and I really love what they're doing. Anyway, that's all that to say. I really like Connor Garland as a player. I really, really have been watching him in earnest this year. And I'll tell you what, he's going to surpass probably his best totals anyway in 2/3 of a season. If this was an 82-game season, he'd be blowing his numbers out of the water. He's going to probably pass him anyway for a season best. Love it, just love it. No problem at all. The $5,000 suspension to Nathan MacKinnon. That was laughable, really. I mean, that was so funny. And yet, of course, usual angst on social media with people just crying like stuck pigs. Oh my God, you make me laugh. In terms of the Montreal Canadiens, biggest character win last night. Coming back 2-0 down, third period, losing Gallagher. You know what? Total fluke, right? Happens to be the hand for the third time. That catches anybody in the hand. Romanoff was firing the biscuit last night, man. And he hit Ethan Bear later in the game. And he was very, very slow to get up. I'll tell you what, that kid's a beauty. He is going to be something else for the Habs here on the blue line going forward. I know there's some great young D-men in the game. Cale Makar in Colorado being the best by far. Ty Smith in New Jersey. Bowen Byram certainly in Colorado as well. Thomas Chabot on every second or third night in Ottawa. When he's not playing 30-plus minutes, I think he's going to be a beauty too. And certainly Romanoff in Montreal. Wow. He played maybe one of his best games last night. He hits like a ton of bricks, and he can fire the puck. He catches Gallagher, right hand, breaks a thumb. Hopefully, look, if the Habs do make the playoffs, and look, they're in the turtle race there in the North, it doesn't matter what happens because now Vancouver's out with COVID for God knows how long. Calgary can't win a game to save their lives. Not going to be an I told you so on Daryl Sutter, but I told you so on Daryl Sutter. And I love the guy. And his legacy is complete no matter what happens here. But I just didn't feel him stepping in for Jeff Ward. Yeah, they got the bump right out of the gate, but there's a lot more holes in Calgary than I think people seem to think outside of myself. And before I pat myself on the back too much, keep in mind, I thought Philadelphia were going to do a whole lot better in their division. So, and that clearly is not the case. I mean, Boston will really have to fall off here because of their games in hand and the fact that they continue to play decent enough hockey that I think they'll stay enough ahead. I know the Rangers have put on a bit of a surge, but there's just not enough racetrack left. I don't believe even already that there's enough racetrack left for the Rangers to make a surge and catch, and nor do I think the Flyers will. Despite a big win for them last night in overtime, Boston got a point anyway. And you're going to see 1,000 of those games here down the stretch. 3-point games all over the place. You're already playing 4-pointers because of the interdivisions. Now the 3-pointers with the loser point, as we all know. And I just think ultimately Boston will probably get in. I think they're going to have real difficulty making any noise in the division. I do think they have slipped back collectively as a team, and they have a hard time staying healthy right now themselves. A lot of injuries this year so far, and COVID-related stuff as well. Look, I said last show or the one before, everybody's getting a mulligan as far as I'm concerned. I still think ultimately the cream will rise to the top, and we'll have a real bona fide, legit Stanley Cup champion, whether it's a repeat of Tampa, Colorado stepping up, Vegas, what have you, somebody making a surprise run. They'll do it in legit fashion because you're going to have to win 4 best-of-7s. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I think the best team will be crowned champ. But anyway, tough loss at Galley. Big win for the Habs. Now Carey Price is out. So Jake Allen on your shoulders now, brother. They call up Caden Primo to back up. We'll see. We'll get some news on the length of Carey. Played one of his best games last night also. 2-pad stack. He had everything going. The lid coming off. I mean, he gave it all out there. And his seasons, his last few years have been so inconsistent. And if that was a sign that he was maybe rounded into form, not to say that it was necessarily, but it was a great game. And he kept Montreal in it enough that they could fashion the comeback. So for him to get hurt and Galley to be out, here's the thing. As I said, if the Habs do make the playoffs, they're not playing a playoff game for close to 6 weeks here. So I like Gallagher's chances to be back for the playoffs. And will that mean maybe we see Caulfield in the interim? Look, he's going to get some NHL action here. All but assuredly. He's going to get a sniff. He's going to be in Laval next game. Probably minimal 3, 4, 5 games maybe. I don't know. I haven't checked their schedule. I'm not sure what they got coming up. But barring anybody else getting hurt on Montreal up front, because they've got Stahl in the lineup now. I don't know how long Armia is going to be out. And you got Frolik still you can put back in. So they're okay here short term in the sense that they got the bodies. Is it their best lineup? Of course not. And that's problematic for Montreal on any given night. But that should be a good game tomorrow night with them and Toronto. Regardless of no Gallagher and Price, I still think, I predict the Habs will give Toronto all they can handle. And the Leafs are, after a bad stretch there, have really righted the ship. And again, though, you look at who they're playing. And I mean, you're beating up on Calgary's. Now the wins against Winnipeg were impressive, because the Jets are an impressive team, at least by North Division standards. Let's be honest, man. It's not a strong division. Having said that, got to give it up for Jack Campbell. I want to touch on him for a second. Here's a guy who was drafted in the first round by Dallas in 2016. That's not that many years ago. I think it was 2016. He was drafted 2015, somewhere around there. And he was in the East Coast Hockey League, folks. He was in the East Coast Hockey League just a few years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, playing for Idaho, the Steelheads. He had 2 stints with them. And look at him now. In fact, he was drafted by Dallas, and he played 1 game for Dallas as a 21-year-old, and he allowed 6 goals. He got lit up. And then they move him on. And now Toronto picks him up. You know, he was in LA, he bounced around. He's in LA. He's 29 years old. And he has tied the Toronto Maple Leaf record for most consecutive wins. This is phenomenal, phenomenal stuff. How do you not love this story? And he's one of the greatest guys. Like, if you watch him in interviews and everything, he's just a class guy. I mean, there's a lot of them in the league like that right now, forwards, D, and goalies. But he's got to be one of the best. And I love the story. And if he does play tomorrow night, obviously I hope the streak comes to an end. But I'll tell you what, he is kicking out BBs. He looks fantastic. And I just absolutely love the story. Anytime I can champion a guy who was in the East Coast League, and they have put more than 400 guys in the NHL. I know so many people don't know that. And so many people say negative things about the league. It's not Brawl City anymore. And that is a damn good professional league. And so many of those guys end up coming back up and getting a shot in the show. And now you've got Jack Campbell, who just a few short years ago was toiling in that league. Impressive stuff. And right now, I mean, Austin Matthews, he should win the Rocket Richard. Probably was going to win it last year. I mean, the old warhorse Ovi is chugging along here. And he's up to 19. He's not catching Matthews at 27. There's no way. And I think Matthews has got a bunch here in the last few games. And look, it's just his release. You look at his first goal last night, and it is just pure snipe. Like, it's been a few years since we've seen anybody. I mean, there's lots of guys who can really release the puck. You'll see it on any given night. Somebody is going to score a beauty with a great release. But nobody right now in the NHL has Matthews' consistency and the ability to do it consistently as he does. He has just got a fantastic release. He's got some shortcomings as a player, for sure. But, you know, I think he came back and played through that wrist injury. And if he's 100% right now, you look at the bunch of games he went without scoring. And he was at a goal-a-game pace there. So if he doesn't end up scoring 50 this year in the 56 games, and he missed, you know, as I said, you got to give credit where it's due. The guy is pure snipe. And offensively, they'll go as he goes. Mitch Marner, he stirs a drink. He's a straw stirrer. There's no question. But, you know, when Matthews is fully healthy, man, he's got to be scoring, and he will. And they'll be a tough out in the North, for sure. They're very fortunate, I think, because the North is the weakest, and I just think that whoever does come out will meet their Waterloo with one of the other 3 teams that they'll have to play in the semifinals. So anyway, that's down the road. That's Toronto. That's Jack Campbell. Leafs get another win last night. Calgary can't win to save their lives. Daryl Sutter signed for 3. Who cares? It's not against the cap anyway. There's no way, I don't think, he finishes that contract. I don't think it was the right hire. I said that at the time. I'm no genius there. I also thought Philadelphia would be doing a whole lot better in their division. So I'm going to eat that one. Carter Hart, speaking of goaltender, I mean, he just fell off the cliff, man. He fell off the cliff. They couldn't get a save. He couldn't get a save. Elliott is no long-term answer there. And, I mean, what happened to the Ghost? You know, they waived him. My God, you think of him in his rookie year, in his second year. it reminds me of Dion Phaneuf. At least in Phaneuf's case, to digress here, when they took the red line out, Dion was young. I think his first few years in Calgary, he was all world. But I think the longer he played with the red line out, because obviously in junior he would have had it in. It's out throughout hockey now. I think guys like him and Wade Redden, they really suffered with no red line. The speed of the game, it really hurt guys like them. And right now I look at the Ghost in Philly, and no relation to the red line there, but the way the game has gone for him in just in a short period of time here, and the speed, conversely, with him, with which the game is played right now, and the different structures that the teams are employing, and the fact that you're playing interdivision the entire time, he hasn't been able to get a breath of fresh air here. Every game is another 4-pointer, and then you add in the goaltending, and when you have a capable defense playing in front of goaltenders who can't stop beach balls kicked from center ice, your D are going to suffer. Case in point, Thomas Chabot here in Ottawa. The guy is a workhorse, man. They're playing him 25, 30 minutes a night. It's too much. Everybody knows that. When he's out there, he's trying to do too much. Everybody knows that. But you see the moments of brilliance of why he is and remains the only defenseman to be MVP of the World Juniors. And you know the guy is a blue chipper. But you also wonder, is there any irreparable harm being done by the extent of which they're playing him right now? Remains to be seen. But, Ottawa, they would have loved to have played the role of spoiler. That probably won't be the case. But I'll tell you, anybody playing them in those last 6 or 8 games, you better keep your head up. I mean, yeah, they rolled over last night against Winnipeg, and that's going to happen. I think the Jets coming off, pretty pissed off of what happened against Toronto. They took it out on Ottawa last night. It was close on the scoreboard, but nowhere else. That's going to happen. But those last few games that Ottawa plays, better keep your head up. And I think I'm looking at you, my team, the Habs, and because they'll hopefully be just back to 100% then. And Ottawa will be out looking your Tchuks and Nick Pauls and Goodbransons, Josh Browns, if they're still around. We'll see what happens through the trade deadline here. Maybe some of those guys will be gone. But you better keep your head up against Ottawa, that's for sure. They'll be extracting a pound of flesh because they'll be on the golf course in mid-May there. So there you have it. Not really too much else I want to say other than Matthew Barzal. Oh, my God. Jeez. I'll tell you, there hasn't been much in the last couple of years that make people take a backwards step from Connor McDavid's rushes up the ice. But Matthew Barzal, there's another guy who's just going to blow his season best right out of the water here. He would have over in 82 games. Still might surpass his goal total. And, boy, has he been something to watch here. And those Islander team, they are going to be a tough out. A little surprised they went out as quickly as they did last year after doing what they did early. That was one of those weird scenarios in the bubble there in August and September. 4-game sweep, 4-game sweep, 4-game sweep. And out they went. But, yeah, you gotta, the more history changes, the more it repeats itself. Brings you back to the New York Islanders losing in 7 games in overtime to the Toronto Maple Leafs in 1978, losing to their arch rival, the New York Rangers, in 1979, and then we all know what happened in the next 5 years, including the first 4 of those 5. But 5 Stanley Cup Finals and 4 Stanley Cups after those 2 devastating losses. So beware Barry Trotz's coached teams, because he's got the pedigree, right, with the Washington Capitals. I don't think there's much I want to say else other than that. I want to do a toast here, and I got a couple things to say. I said a good chunk of it there. Oh, my God. Big shot. Look at that. Repping my St. Leonard's here. Property of St. Leonard's. Greatest elementary school in the history of the world. It's a big one, folks. Said already my bit about Mike Glover. Said already my bit about Greg Holmes and his passing, so I'll be toasting both of those guys. Hopefully Mike's health go forward, and of course the memory of Greg Holmes, but also want to toast the passing of Ralph Mitchell, a name none of you will know. Even some of you who would have read the book, The Real Ogie, I'm so proud of that effort, by the way, and so proud of Goldie's effort of working that with me. And Ralph Mitchell was a trainer. He died about a month ago, and news just kind of filtered out our way, myself through Goldie a few days ago. And he was 83 years old, so he lived a good life, although his health the last few years was not good. But he leaves behind his wife Florence and a child and a grandchild and a great network of friends and family, including siblings. You know what? He was one of 13 kids born in Brantford, Ontario. And he died, I believe, in Kitchener in palliative care. As I said, he was 83. He was a trainer extraordinaire. This guy was legendary in the hockey circles. He did the job for about 30 years in the United States and in Canada, and he crossed paths with Goldie in Syracuse, and then I believe also later in San Diego. And if you did read the book, and maybe the name did jog your memory, we do have a few sort of sidebar little stories about Mr. Mitchell, and Goldie says he was the toughest guy on the team. This is the trainer. Like, there's a couple instances in those brawls that I write about in the book. Ralph Mitchell is right in the middle of it. He's right in the middle, just giving her. And there's some great stories, some great interaction that Goldie had with him, primarily in Syracuse in his rookie year in 73-74, where they won the league, by the way. And then later again in San Diego, when Goldie's team was called, at the time, the most violent team in hockey history. Ralph Mitchell was the trainer on this team. Not only was everybody in the lineup super tough, but their trainer was maybe the toughest guy. I'll tell you, you gotta love stuff like that, especially a guy who lived to 83 years of age. So, you know, to his family, his wife, his child, his grandchild, and any other family and friends of Mr. Mitchell, including you, Goldie, who let me know about him. I never got a chance to meet him, but 83, we should all be so lucky, God willing, to get there, and what a life he led. So on behalf of Mike Glover and his trauma last week, on going forward, Glovey, you know, I love you and thinking of you, buddy. The Holmes family yet again for a tough loss here. Gone far too soon. Greg Holmes. And to the memory of Ralph Mitchell. Cheers to all of them. Everybody stay safe. This shot brought to you, of course, by Ad Seal Services. My dear friend Mark Cullen, and the fantastic job his business does to waterproof all commercial industry type of operations. And, of course, Hosie and Brown Automotive. Thank you all. Everybody stay safe. We'll talk to you again in a couple of days. G'day.